By now, I'm pretty sure that all of you have a good understanding of the current metagame. You know that humans are the most powerful class, amphibians are at the bottom, and even in unfamiliar territory you can sort characters into their class archetypes. Hidden on every surface and every drop of water, however, is a meta so alien you'd almost think you were playing a different game. To me, this hidden world is fascinating, containing an immense amount of complexity that most players simply ignore. Welcome to the micro weight class. Microscopic life follows a vastly different set of rules than players on a larger scale. Every build lives fast, dies quickly, and completes the main quest at any chance they get. Most loadouts aren't geared for traditional PvP, and are instead focused on scoring wins on as many smaller players as possible. In the micro weight class, size matters. This fact leads to difficulties that make typical tier lists that would only include micro-sized builds impossible. Instead, this guide will focus on microscopic players, the threats they face, and how players in the current meta exploit them. Let's just jump right into it. At the bottom of the list, in F tier, we have bacteria. They are the oldest guild and among the smallest players in the game. However, in the micro weight class, size is everything. Bacteria are prey to countless larger builds, and many Spectre loadouts who exclusively farm them for XP. Their exploitation doesn't end there. Recently, data miners and human mains have figured out how to farm bacteria for research, consumables, and food production. In particular, the enzyme alpha amylase is farmed from genetically modified bacteria that catalyze the breakdown of starch into glucose and maltose, useful in industrial food production. While bacteria inhabit every server, biome, drop of water, and surface, they fall victim to many builds specializing in scoring mass wins against them, placing them firmly in F tier. Moving on to D tier, we have Paramecium. Paramecium is a subgroup of players in the Ciliate Guild, which consists of unicellular builds that center their gameplay strategy around tiny hairs that they use to swim, crawl, feed, and sense. They are protists, not plants or animals, and exist in every freshwater server in the game. They use their cilia to sweep bacteria and algae into their mouths. Established Paramecium players can defeat up to 5,000 bacteria per day. Unlike bacteria, they aren't defenseless in PvP. Their outer wall is covered in trichocysts, small sacs containing long filaments and proteins that can be expelled in response to danger. Similar to bacteria, Paramecium are held back by their size. Even with the defensive trichocysts, they're defeated constantly by multicellular players as well as PvPers their size. This spread of bad matchups against larger builds plants them firmly in D tier. But not all builds simply grieve smaller players. Moving on, in C tier, we have the eukaryotic builds who gave up easy wins against bacteria to pick on things their own size. These players employ a wide range of abilities to find and eliminate AFK farming casuals. For example, this Lacrimaria, a high-level ciliate, searches its surroundings with a long neck. And this Rotifer baits some Paramecium into swimming directly into its mouth. This group also contains Euglena, a class of unicellular algae. It can photosynthesize, but when sunlight is scarce, it attacks and consumes nearby players. These builds are powerful against players their size, but are consumed en masse by larger builds, earning them a solid spot in C tier. In B tier, we have another group of microscopic combatants, a group whose members begin to stretch the definition of microorganism, amoebas. Amoebae are characterized by their special ability, pseudopods, which they use to propel their amorphous bodies forward. While many in their ranks are low tier, they have many standout builds, notably the giant amoeba, the brain-eating amoeba, and Syringamina fragilissima, a single cell that can measure 8 inches across. On the whole, they're powerful fighters in their weight class with definite top-tier standouts in the Microbial Meta. In A tier, we have the first non-microbial build. Water fleas are crustaceans that are between 0.5 and 5 millimeters long, spec'd to maximize the number of wins they score against micro-sized players. They beat their abdominal legs in a way that passes a current through their bodies, PKing tiny players caught in the stream, and can grow defensive structures on their bodies in response to stress, including spiked helmets and neck teeth. Their intermediate size, between traditional builds and microscopic ones, is important. They're eaten by fish and crabs and thereby funnel XP from micro to macroscopic servers. Water fleas are farmed by human data miners for research. A water flea's organs, including its heart, are visible from the outside, and their thin membrane allows for drugs to be easily absorbed. This allows for study on the effects of toxins, drugs, and the upcoming balance patch 1.3.7 on ecosystems. S tier is occupied by macroscopic builds who are nearly untouchable for players on the micro scale. This includes fish, crabs, and the ocean's greatest cowards, baleen whales. These cetaceans have spent their evolution points on a unique weapon, baleen, which can only deal damage to players in the micro weight class. These whales, which are among the largest builds in the game, spend all of their time griefing the smallest ones. This sounds like a terrible idea, considering the minuscule amount of XP gained by defeating such tiny opponents, but through the sheer volume of wins whales accumulate, they are able to thrive with the most toxic niche in the history of the game. However, the most overpowered threat in the micro weight class isn't the largest build in the game. Instead, that title goes to the opposite. Viruses. It's heavily debated among data miners whether or not they're even playable, but for the purpose of this guide, I'll consider them NPCs. Viruses are more akin to a force of nature than players to overcome. They're impossible to PvP and cannot be fought, only survived. The virus versus bacteria matchup is incredibly one-sided. The bacteria player base's single effective defense against phages will only kick in after surviving an infection, and as a result, up to 40% of all cyanobacteria in the ocean are killed by viruses every day. Wherever bacteria exist, phages likely thrive. They're an omnipresent and ever-evolving threat. In fact, they're powerful enough that human mains are currently developing methods to weaponize them against bacteria mains who've chosen antibiotic resistance perks. While whales and crabs can get sick and are limited to the water, viruses are universal and uncompatible. They reign supreme in the microorganism meta. An honorable mention goes to humans. While their symbiotic relationship with food-digesting bacteria is notable, recently, human mains have discovered how to exploit the game's engine by code-injecting traits into bacteria. This new facet of human gameplay is evolving rapidly, and time will only tell how it'll affect the meta. But, with such a brazen defiance of the game's intended mechanics amid the already numerous cries for nerfs, human mains should be careful not to anger the devs enough to bring themselves a new balance patch. This video was inspired by the YouTuber Tierzu, and by inspired I mean I stole the idea and graphics from his channel. Consider checking him out, he makes really fantastic videos.